Okay, a major conflict is unfolding in Iran and things are moving incredibly fast. So, in the next few minutes, we're going to break down what you need to know, who's fighting, why, and how it's already impacting the rest of the world. Let's dive right in. 787. Before we talk about anything else, before we get into the politics, the military strategy, any of it, that's the number you need to know. According to the Iranian Red Crescent Society, that's how many people have been killed in just a few short days. It's a staggering human cost, and it really puts everything else we're about to talk about into perspective.
So where did this all begin? Let's rewind to the very start and look at the initial attacks that really kicked this whole thing off.
Whoa. The conflict kicked off with a huge joint operation by the US and Israel. And I mean, just look at these numbers. We're talking more than 1,000 recorded attacks, hitting over 500 different sites. And these were not just random targets. Not at all. They were aiming right for the heart of Iran's leadership, hitting places like the presidential office in Tehran and the Supreme National Security Council.
And that human cost we mentioned, it's spreading far beyond just Iran. On top of the at least 787 civilians killed inside Iran, U.S. Central Command is now reporting that 6 American service members have also been killed. And look at this. The UN's refugee agency says over 30,000 people have already been displaced in neighboring Lebanon. So you can see, this isn't just happening in one place. It's already creating a much wider regional crisis. You know, whenever there's conflict involving Iran, one of the first questions everyone asks is, what about their nuclear program? Well, we have a pretty big development on that front. The IAEA, that's the International Nuclear Watchdog, has confirmed that the Natanz nuclear site has sustained some damage. Now, the key thing they're stressing is that no radiological leak is expected, which is obviously a huge relief. But the fact that a nuclear facility was targeted at all, that is a major, major escalation. Okay, so we have the initial facts on the ground. Now let's switch gears and look at what the leaders are actually saying. What's the official story from each side? From the United States, the message sounds like they're just getting started. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the next phase will be even more punishing on Iran than it is right now. So that's a pretty clear signal that they're digging in for a long and intense campaign. But then you have Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, saying something a little different. He's directly taking on those fears of a drawn-out conflict, saying you're not going to have an endless war. So it's interesting, right? You've got this contrast in tone between the U.S. and Israel, and that's definitely something to keep an eye on. And what about Iran? Well, their official story is that this is a very limited conflict. Their foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, is claiming that Iran is not at war with the region and is only targeting Israel and U.S. military bases. The thing is, that narrative is already clashing with reports of strikes hitting civilian areas in places like Dubai, so yeah. So what does the U.S. actually want to achieve here? Well, we have a pretty good idea thanks to a White House memo that went out to lawmakers. And the stated goals are huge. We're talking about completely annihilating Iran's navy, making sure they can never build a nuclear weapon, and ending the threat from the Iranian regime itself. And get this, the memo even brings up the death of the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, calling it a potential byproduct of the campaign. Like a stone thrown into a pond, this conflict is sending ripples out everywhere. It's not just staying within Iran's borders. It's shaking up the entire region and even hitting global markets. Let's take a look. And it's already spreading. We're seeing drone strikes targeting U.S. embassies in both Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. Plus, a British airbase in Cyprus has been hit. It looks like more and more countries are getting pulled into this, whether they want to be or not. So, how did the global markets react? Well, pretty much how you'd expect. The overall market is down because of all the uncertainty. But 2 areas are just soaring, and that's defense and energy. It's kind of a classic playbook reaction when something like this happens. And here are a couple of prime examples. A huge defense contractor like Northrop Grumman, their stock is up 6%. And even a tech company like NVIDIA, which makes critical chips used in modern warfare, saw a 3% bump. You can see the financial impact in real time. The other big story, of course, is oil. Anytime there's instability in the Middle East, the markets get nervous about supply. And sure enough, prices for both WTI and Brent crude have jumped by over 6%. That's a pretty big leap, and it's something you and I are probably going to feel at the gas pump very soon. So with all of this happening, it all comes down to one big, unsettling question. What happens now? Well, U.S. intelligence is already bracing for Iran to hit back.
An assessment says a major physical attack on U.S. soil isn't likely right now, but the main concern in the short term is cyber attacks. So we could be looking at a whole new front opening up in the digital world, which is, completely unpredictable.
And that brings us to the question that's on everybody's mind. With all the conflicting statements and the situation getting more intense by the day, just how long is this going to last? It really is the biggest unknown right now. And to cap it all off, we have this one specific timeline from President Trump, who suggested the fighting might go on for 4 to 5 weeks. Now, is that a real prediction? Is it just politics? A message to friends and foes? Honestly, nobody knows for sure. And that right there, that uncertainty, is probably the one thing we can be sure of as this crisis continues to unfold.